Okay, so this is a painting I made pretty quickly. I went ahead and packed up all my art supplies the night before in my wagon and went around the corner from my house where there's this great street light, and it's actually on public property, so it's just a nice place to paint when it's sort of the wee hours of the morning. I think this was maybe 6:30 in the morning. It was pretty much right before twilight for this painting. I approach each painting a little bit differently, but for this one, I knew I wanted to go quickly. It would be for a very brief time when the sky is that sort of bright blue. It's like a neon blue before it turns into like a dawn color. And you'll see in the video how the sky changes. It was just rapid from what I remember. But yeah, I went ahead and started by mixing up the sky color because I was really excited about that and wanted to get that in first. I also find that I like to mix up the color that represents the space that's farthest away. And so the motif I was looking at, the sky was the space that was far away. So that then I could, when I went in with the trees would then be on top of the sky. And that would hopefully make the edges between the sky and the trees more easy to negotiate. So yeah, now I'm mixing up a color for the trees. I liked how there was that neon blue sky and then these dark trees. It was sort of like, I think it was a row of cypresses, but they kind of leaned into each other, and I liked that. It reminded me of the rectangle. I like when shapes in a picture kind of lean in towards each other, and how those shapes can kind of, I don't know, there's sort of a vibrating effect of the shapes against the edges of a rectangle. So yeah, there's these dark trees, and then there's also the light of the street light that I'm working under, and that light is shining on the trees that are in front of these dark trees that I've just put in. So yeah, I'm working on my stacking. This is something I learned from my artist friend, Conrad Frankel. He said everyone loves a well-stacked painting, meaning that a painting is kind of like a relief, almost like a sculpture in a way, where the farthest thing away is truly painted first, and then stacked on top of that is the item that is the next farthest away, and then on top of that, the item that is a little bit closer. So there's a little bit of a reality in a literal sense to the depth in the painting. And for this painting, I chose to mix with my brushes. It's fast, it's exciting. I love that way of doing things. I would say most of the time when I'm in my studio, I prefer to mix with a palette knife when I'm working really slow and I'm not in not making something all at once like I am in this picture. I like to really spend a lot of time on each color, sometimes as long as 10 minutes to calibrate it. One thing I like to talk about in my classes is the theories of Charles Hawthorne in the book Hawthorne on Painting. He talks about spot color theory and how if you get the largest spots in your painting, the correct value, temperature, and hue, and in the right relationship to each other, then you're going to get some sort of feeling of reality, or a perceptual moment, as my teacher Alana Hagler used to say. That's definitely something I aim for, is a sort of sense of a perceptual moment, a sense of reality. And of course, a sense of reality is a kind of a unique thing in a way. It's something we all share, but each artist, each person kind of has their own perception, their own voice, their own take on what they're seeing, and on what they're experiencing, and what their internal experience is like. And that's something that I'm going to focus on in the class, is how do you tap into what you're seeing, and then allowing that to kind of be inside one's head for a minute, and see what kind of feelings can get mixed up with observation, and how can that then influence one's painting. One problem that I really am fascinated with, and I've seen other artists play around with it too, is this idea that a painting should really be about one thing. Charles Hawthorne talks about how a painting is like a wedding speech, where if you want to be remembered, you're giving a wedding speech, say one thing, and then sit down. And the same applies to painting. So in this painting here, I'm sort of trying to say one thing by leaning two things together. I think Morandi did this a fair amount, where he would kind of push or Morandi and also Joseph Albers, he would take two things, like two squares, and then encapsulate them so that it was one thing. But it was two things surrounded by one thing. So he was only saying one thing. But I don't know, it was just a funny sort of problem that he seemed to wrestle with. Joseph Albers, and also I think in a much more complicated way, Morandi. And I see it in a lot of people, and we'll probably talk about that some in class. How do you say just one thing so that everything else in the picture serves that one thing and doesn't compete with it? As soon as you are trying to say more than one thing for real, like let's say there's a really cool pine tree here, and there's a really neat bird over here, and look, there's a pond over here, and wow, there's a path. And you're so excited about all these beautiful things, and so the danger is to put equal emphasis on all of those things, and then you're saying so many things that the eye becomes overwhelmed and doesn't really take any of it in. I think sometimes the trick is to pick one thing, like say the path, and all the other things one might be excited about in the picture. This is a theoretical picture, by the way. It's not the picture I'm painting right now. All the other things can find a way to serve the path. Like maybe there's a swan on the lake, and the swan is swimming over. The neck is craned towards the path, and the contrast is actually very soft, so that it's not shouting. It's sort of a little happy thing you notice later on in the painting. But the path is positioned in the picture just so that it's really the thing. So I guess the question now is, in this painting I'm working on here in the video, what is my wedding speech? And I would say it's these bushes that I've just kind of put in. There's a highlight on the right hand side that's more yellow, and then on the left hand side it's, I would say, almost purplish orangish, but they're kind of a large clump of bushes, and that's they're taking up quite a lot of space in the picture plane. I would say that's my wedding speech. I'm talking about how the synthetic light is landing on those bushes, and then everything else is more is not bathed in that synthetic light. It's more affected by the sun, the very slow arrival of the sun. And so there's kind of two worlds going on. There's the world of the street lamp, and then there's the world of everything that's not touching the light of the street lamp. And that, to me, is kind of making a foreground and a background, and kind of keeping the structure of the painting more simple, so that if you were to simplify it more than it is now, where it is quite simple, but if you were to pare it down even more, it's really like a large oval of orange, and then behind it is a dark blue. I like to think about Mark Rothko's work a lot. I thought he simplified composition in such a genius way, where his thing, his wedding speech, were these bands of color and the way they vibrated against the edge of his picture plane. And that distance between his like blocks of color, his color fields, and the edge of his picture plane, the way he navigated that distance, it was just so felt. And it really takes up space. His color field paintings, they just, I mean, I've heard other people say this too, they just expand beyond their borders. And so I think I was thinking about that a bit in this painting. How can I make this more representational painting speak in an abstract way, where the bushes are kind of pushing against the picture plane, the orange bushes, and then the dark trees in the background are also kind of pushing against the picture plane. And I also try to think about how every shape I put in my picture has a sort of vibrational relationship to the four sides of the painting. I like to think that every paintbrush is very conscious of the four sides of the painting, has a sort of relationship to it. So I've almost kind of got my picture all blocked in, and I don't think I'll do a whole lot more beyond that. I do like to put pieces of canvas or linen, tape it to a board, and then in that way I can move the tape around to change the dimensions of my painting as my compositional vision changes with the process. So yeah, at this point I was really excited about the way the sky was reflecting onto the little bit of pavement there, and I loved how the pavement blue color had a relationship with the bright blue twilight color of the sky. And yeah, you can notice here that the sky has lightened quite a lot, and so I'm realizing that I'm pretty much out of time. My landscape has changed so much as the sun moves up in the sky that I'm thinking, okay, gotta wrap this up. I do highly recommend this, spending a little bit of time outside as the sun either comes up or goes down. It's really kind of an exciting experience to watch the whole world change and pay attention to all the little increments. You also don't really have to worry about being in the sun or in the shade, so that's nice. You can pretty much paint anywhere. Yeah, so thank you so much for watching, and happy painting to you.